The left is caught red-handed, attacking people who disagree with its narratives, me being one of them, accusing them of being Russian bots in order to stifle dissent. And I'll explain how our military aid to Ukraine, guys, is leaving our military arsenal so low that some experts believe we couldn't last more than a week if we had to go to war with China right now. And there is some talk that that may be very possible in the future. Be sure to visit my website, www.saracarter.com, for my latest reporting and stories. And while you are there, be sure to subscribe to my email list so that you don't get shadow banned and so that we can stay in touch. In just a moment, we're going to be talking about Hamilton68. That's this group, and it's run by partisans and high-ranking deep state operatives, including former FBI officials, that accused anyone disputing the narrative on the Russia hoax, which, remember, that was where I started everything in the very beginning, 2016-17 with John Solomon, trying to expose the Russia hoax and many other issues of peddling Russian disinformation. Also, this past weekend, I was in Memphis, Tennessee, and I covered the protest in the wake of the horrific beating of Tyre Nichols by 5 Black police officers. I talked to the protesters and heard what they had to say, and I'm going to share that with you here on the show. Later, I'll tell you why a year of huge military aid to Ukraine is resulting in a dangerously low arsenal of missiles and other weapons, and that includes our ammunition. How can President Biden be this irresponsible? How can he be this irresponsible with the American people and our national security? I'll explain what I think. I'll also be joined by Congressman Ben Cline from Virginia's 6th District. He is the chairman, listen to this, of the Judiciary Subcommittee on Responsiveness and Accountability to Oversight. And we will cover how he hopes to keep the Biden bureaucracy from infringing on the rights of Americans. Hey, everyone, please follow and subscribe. Get all the links at saraacarter.com. That is saraacarter.com. And while you are there, sign up for our email list so that you don't get shadow banned. AMAC, I love AMAC, and I love the fact that AMAC is a sponsor to this Sara Carter show. One of the best organizations out there, and I can tell you this, this is the reason why they have stuck with the show. I'm sticking with AMAC, and I know that you are too. So by joining AMAC, it's the Association of Mature American Citizens, you are taking the first steps to saving the America that you love. AMAC offers an alternative to just about every other benefit that other group offers. But guess what? Without any liberal agenda. I stand with AMAC, and I hope that you will too. I encourage you to join today. That's at amac.us/Carter. That's amac.us/Carter. The benefits of membership are great, but guess what? The cause is even greater. Join today at amac.us/Carter. So I was in Memphis, and I flew down to Memphis, Tennessee as soon as Sean's team, Sean Hannity, asked if I would go down there. And I said, yes, of course. It was so horrific. I know all of you heard about Tyre Nichols and how he was beaten. I think when I saw the video the night that I was down there to cover the protests, when it was first released on Thursday night, I was just in a state of shock watching how this man was being beaten by these 5 officers. And I kept thinking to myself, like, did they know him from somewhere? What was going on here? How is this even possible in the United States? And, you know, and I think the most gut-wrenching for me watching this abuse of power, because that's what this was about. There was something else going on here, but this was an abuse of power. We trust our law enforcement officials, right? We should be able to do the right thing, to go above and beyond, to protect and to serve. That is what we entrust them with. And when we saw this video, it breaks that trust. So you can imagine what the people in Memphis were feeling, right? Especially in African-American minority communities. They were already under a lot of duress in the past. And this is not talking about, I'm not necessarily talking about race. because this is what they were talking to me about. It was about trust in institutions and what that means. So maybe even if you're in a poor white neighborhood, trust in institutions, right? I happen to be in a neighborhood that was mainly a minority Black neighborhood, but the trust in the institutions goes all across the board. Even when I'm talking about the FBI, the deep state, right? When we're talking about entrusting our agencies to protect and serve us. And what we saw in that video was horrific. We see 5 Black officers, they were police officers, 5 police officers beating a young man in the middle of the street, chasing him down. It was this hour-long video, over an hour long. And I think it draws to the fact that there's a lot of misconceptions, right? And people are using like these incidences to benefit themselves, their own, NGOs, or we've seen in the past when it is a racial issue, we've seen, a number of groups, special interest groups and stuff try to go down into these neighborhoods, and, you see the anger growing, and you see people that come from out of town and try to make things worse. There was a little bit of that happening in Memphis, not a lot, because the people of Memphis were very, very focused on the fact that this was, and these were the folks that I talked to that were marching, and I thought were so eloquent. They were saying, this isn't about race, this is about humanity. This is about the fact that we should trust our law enforcement officers to do the right thing. And, and at the end of that video, when you hear those screams, because he was so close to his mother's house, this is Tyree Nichols, when you hear him screaming for his mother, because in my mind, maybe he was hoping that she would hear him. And she, obviously could not hear him. And that's haunting her now, that she couldn't be there for him. But you hear that as a mother, I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh. I mean, my heart was broken. Folks, we've got to be able to trust our law enforcement. We have to be able to trust our government. We have to be able to trust that fact that these bureaucracies and these agencies and these police forces that we pay for with our taxpayer dollars, and they are funded through us, that they are trustworthy, that the people that they put in these institutions are well trained, and that they are not going to abuse power. And if they do abuse power, that they are held accountable. Now that leads me to Hamilton68. But before I go there, I want to thank everybody in Memphis, because I had an amazing amount of interviews in Memphis. I was on all night with Sean Hannity, and the people of Memphis were warm. They were welcoming. It was peaceful protests, and I think that they taught the rest of the nation how to do that in such a way that not only do you get listened to, but you can hold people accountable and hold the police force accountable for what happened to them in their community. And I'm praying for them still. I know they've got a long way to go. But now I'm going to jump to Hamilton68. And the reason I'm going to jump there is because I don't know if you've been following Matt Taibbi. He's broken a ton of stories on Twitter. He's amazing. Barry Weiss has done the same, and a few others. Elon Musk giving them, of course, access to all of the documentation inside Twitter once he took over. And you can see that even ex-officials, like with the FBI and others, current officials within our government and within our intelligence community and within the FBI, were invested in ensuring that they were covering up, 1, for Biden, and 2, targeting anyone, it seemed, and everyone who didn't agree with the swamp narrative. And that means anybody who supported President Trump, or anybody, you didn't even have to support President Trump. If you just didn't agree with the narrative that the swamp is constantly spilling the lies coming from the Biden administration, you probably became a target. I want to read this to you. And this was from Hot Air by Jazz Shaw. And it's a really important story because Hamilton68, I don't know if you know this, was a computerized dashboard. It was designed for reporters and other academics, supposedly to measure quote unquote Russian disinformation. But the funny thing was, it was the brainchild of a former FBI agent who currently is an MSNBC disinformation expert, Clint Watts. Folks, if he is not investigated by the Republicans, if he is not, then I'm going to think the Republicans are in on it. I think it is imperative that now that Republicans have control of the House, they've got to investigate all of these people. They've got to invest their time to find out exactly who Clint Watts is connected to. Exactly. He was backed by the German Marshall Fund and the Alliance for Securing Democracy. It's supposedly a bipartisan think tank. They need to know if he was talking to higher up officials in the FBI, if there's email exchanges between him and other intelligence agencies. Because this is not just this Hamilton68 computerized dashboard that was used to basically target people on Twitter that were sharing information. Twitter is a global social media modern day phenomena, like Facebook is, like Instagram is. These are important tools of communication in the modern age. They pass all cultural and barriers. And not just that, they reach people all over the globe in such a way that targeting somebody on these platforms or lying about somebody on these platforms, the way that it has been done is very dangerous. But more so if, for example, this was part of a bigger, which we've already seen, problem. We know that John Brennan, James Comey, James Clapper, who was head of the Director of National Intelligence, John Brennan, former head of the CIA, Comey, who was former head of the FBI. We know, and Andy McCabe, second in command, we know there were people connected to them at the DOJ. We know that they targeted President Trump and anyone who supported him. And we know how far this went. We know how far this went in our government. Why? Because Devin Nunes had amazing investigations, Jim Jordan as well, House Judiciary, but nothing really was done. Nobody has ever really been held accountable for the work that these supposed employees of our government that we entrust with our safety and security, that they were working against us. They were working against us. Because regardless of how you feel about President Trump, I don't care if you're on the left and you hate him. You should not accept the fact that government officials are literally working against a U.S. president using the tools that were created to target our enemies, using those tools to target our enemies against the American people and a duly elected president of these United States. And by the way, there are so many people that still believe the lies, because they were lied to. They were lied to by CNN. They were lied to by all the local ABC, NBC, CBS, everybody, even if they didn't even correct the lies. Washington Post, New York Times, reporters who won Pulitzers for lies. Dangerous lies. Let me read this to you. Clint Watts, he was backed by those organizations, the German Marshall Fund, the Alliance for Securing Democracy. The latter's adversary panel, listen to this, included former acting CIA chief Michael Morrell, former ambassador to Russia Michael McFaul, former Hillary Clinton chair John Podesta, and one-time Weekly Standard editor Bill Kristol, all of which were never Trumpers, anti-Trumpers, anti-American. They were involved in targeting people on the internet, on Twitter, who were just trying to tell the truth or who didn't agree with the narrative. Every single one of those people needs to be called to a hearing. Every single one of them. And they need to be investigated. Virtually every major news organization in America is implicated. Listen to this: NBC, CBS, ABC, PBS, CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, Mother Jones did 14 stories pegged to the group's research, to Hamilton68 as sources. PolitiFact and Snoops. No wonder the American people were so bamboozled. The world was lied to. Listen to this. It was a secret list of 644 Twitter accounts which were supposedly linked to Russian activity online. While no one in the media or on Twitter knew which accounts Hamilton68 was looking at, Twitter was able to reverse engineer it because Hamilton68 was using their API to look at those accounts. What Twitter found was a bunch of junk and a bunch of English language accounts that were never based in Russia. In fact, of the 644, only 36 were registered in Russia. And many of those were associated with Russian news, with RT. Examining further, Twitter executives said they were shocked. The accounts on Hamilton68 claimed that they were linked to Russian influence activities online, but were not overwhelmingly English-based. They were 86%. But mostly legitimate people in the United States, Canada, and Britain. And I'm telling you right now, that was no accident. That was an operation. These people, and the real truth is going to be here, folks. And I'm going to explain that in future episodes as well. And I'm going to bring on experts. But I am telling you, there are people in our intelligence community, and they were working hand in hand with other people, utilizing the tools that our intelligence community had trained them in, utilizing those tools that we use to target foreign enemies, which, by the way, is considered lethal operations when you think of disinformation campaigns. You have to go, if you're working for an intelligence agency and you're going to conduct an operation this big, an operation against a sitting world leader. For example, the United States is going to go after Saddam Hussein. We're going to use that as an example, a past example. You would literally have to go to the president and get a signature from the president to conduct this type of operation against a sitting world leader, because guess what? Lies and targeting people could literally get people killed. That's a fact. That's a fact. And these lies have stuck and they stick. And these people are responsible for that. This wasn't just about Twitter. This was about our integrity as a nation, about our Constitution, the foundation that our founding fathers literally set up so that stuff like this would not happen, so that we would not have dictators, so that we would not be run by these type of bureaucratic monoliths, right? So that there would be checks and balances. This was not supposed to happen in the United States of America. And the only way it's not going to happen, folks, is if we hold the people accountable that were doing it, shed light on everything. That's why I'm so grateful for what Elon Musk is doing, Matt Taibbi, Barry Weiss, everyone exposing what went on in that area, in that chapter of that horrific history, and you have to ask yourself this question. I'm going to get right to it. We're going to be going very soon to Congressman Cline from Virginia's 6th District, but you have to ask yourself this. You have to ask yourself this. What kind of nation do we live in? Are we going to hold the people accountable that did this the right way, legitimately, exposing them through congressional hearings and putting people into office that are actually going to make a difference in the future and adhere to those founding principles that make our nation so great? I'll be right back. Allegiance Gold. Allegiance Gold is the new sponsor for the Sarah Carter Show. And guess what? Right now, you'll get $5,000 of free silver on a qualifying purchase when you tell them that Sara sent you. My friends at Allegiance Gold can help you protect your IRA or your 401k with physical gold and silver, or have it delivered securely right to your door. Get $5,000 of free silver on a qualifying purchase, and you know how important this is, folks, right? Because remember what we saw in Canada. We saw people getting their bank accounts seized. We've seen it. We've even seen it here in the United States, where banks have tried to remove people from their banking systems, right? Because they didn't agree with their politics. This is just a new day and age. It's a new world, and we have to protect ourselves and protect our finances. And I'm going to tell you, this is the way to do it. Get $5,000 of free silver on a qualifying purchase when you tell them that Sara sent you. So don't wait. Call or click today, 877-702-7272. That's 877-702-SARA, or go to protectwithsara.com. We can't control the Biden administration, but we can prepare. 877-702-7272. That's 877-702-SARA, SARA, or protectwithsara.com. I've got Congressman Ben Cline of Virginia's 6th District. Thank you so much, Congressman, for coming on the Sara Carter Show.
Thanks, Sara. Great to be with you.
Yeah, it's great to be with you, too. Just so everybody knows, Congressman Cline is the chair of the Judiciary Subcommittee on Responsiveness and Accountability to Oversight and chair of the Republican Study Committee's Budget and Spending Task Force. That's a lot on your plate, Congressman.
Well, it is. But, we've had a lot pile up over these 2 years of unified Democrat control. We've got a lot of oversight to tackle, and we've got a lot of fiscal responsibility to restore. So I'm proud to have both titles. And first coming up is going to be the Judiciary Committee, and I'm anxious to get to work on that.
Yeah, this is so important. I know everybody who listens to the show, and I get so many emails and questions on this. The House Judiciary's upcoming hearing on the border is something that everybody is watching, including me. I spent so much of my career on the U.S.-Mexico border, and the last few years, of course, the last 3 years and a half has been horrific. It's just been a nightmare there. What can we expect from that hearing?
Well, it's going to be a lot of just information given to the committee about the current state of the border, because we have to really lay the foundation for moving legislation here very soon to really control the border and secure it, because what's coming across whether it's sex trafficking, drug trafficking, it's not just at the border. In my district, in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, you're seeing people dying from fentanyl overdoses. You're seeing sex trafficking and human trafficking up and down the interstate that runs the length of my district. And it's horrific. It's a humanitarian crisis, not just at the border, but for the millions who are coming across the border and for those communities that are being impacted. It's truly tragic, and we have to take action immediately and force this administration to confront the damage that it has caused from its benign neglect of the border crisis.
You put that so well. I'm devastated by what I've seen at the border. And I talk to folks all the time. Just last week, I had a segment on my good friend Sean Hannity's show with regard to Border Patrol agents' wives that reached out to me because they needed to speak up. They said because they needed to be a voice for their husbands who are literally on the edge right now with the crisis at the border. They say that the national security of the United States is at risk, that the morale among Border Patrol agents, it's at the lowest they've ever seen. They feel that the administration has literally abandoned the agents as well as their families. I mean, it's never been such a crisis. I've been covering this for nearly 20 years, Congressman. I've never, ever expected it to get this bad. And it is. And to the point where even some of these wives are saying, I would be willing to go talk to Congress. I would be willing to testify to what's going on here.
And we'd love to hear it, because we need to hear from people on the ground, people who are either Border Patrol agents or family members of Border Patrol agents. They are putting their lives on the line for this country, but also you see them dying trying to save migrants who are crossing the rivers, drowning, and they're putting their own lives and sacrificing their own lives for these people. And it is truly tragic what's happening, and we need to stop it. Now, we can do it by providing resources, and I'm on the Appropriations Committee as well. So we're going to try and provide resources for more technology and more barriers and more people on the ground to stop these migrants from coming into the country illegally. But we also need to reform our asylum laws. We have to make sure that, as Chip Roy, who is the sponsor of the legislation that I'm supporting, has said, we need to make sure that when people arrive at the border, they can claim asylum, but if they want to remain in the United States, they're going to remain in custody. And they're not going to be granted parole, and they're not going to be released to the interior of the country and vanish into essentially this underworld that exists where they're not allowed to legally have employment, and they're not allowed to legally have driver's licenses in many states. So better that they either return to the Mexico side of the border or that they're detained and protected from harm, and the United States is protected as well, and they remain in custody.
Right. So Congressman Chip Roy is my congressman. I'm out here in his district, and that is, you co-sponsored with him, the Border Safety and Security Act. This bill, I think, is vitally important. You also sponsored the Stop the Cartels Act with Congressman Davidson. Talk about the damage these cartels have done to your district in Virginia in particular, because I think you brought it up. I always tell everybody, this is not just some kind of statement. I know we've heard it over and over again that the border is not just on the border, it's in every state, but it really is in every state. And I've seen it all across this country, the damage that these drug cartels, I call them terrorist organizations. When I think of Sinaloa, when I think of Nuevo Generacion, when I think of La Familia Beltran Leyva, the Juarez cartel, some of these big ones, I literally see them now as evolving into almost terror organizations because of the damage that has been inflicted on our country. How has your district fared?
Well, every district is a border district now. And so we're all seeing the same types of crimes and drug trafficking, sex trafficking that occurs at the border, but maybe not in the same numbers that the border communities are seeing, but we're all seeing it. And so the cartels are, for all intents and purposes, in control of the border. They are recognizing that they make more money from human trafficking than they do from the drugs. And so when I visited the Border Patrol agents said, and you've probably seen it, the cartels will send waves of migrants across the border in one place to draw CPB agents from another, and in that unprotected area, they'll move drugs. And so it's just kind of a cat and mouse game with Border Patrol. There aren't enough Border Patrol agents. They are underpaid. They are understaffed. They are underappreciated, especially by this administration. We do owe them such a debt of gratitude. But we have to take stronger action with the cartels. We have to treat them as the terrorist organizations that they are. I've heard colleagues of mine debate whether or not we need to authorize the use of military force, as we have in other countries in the Middle East, for the use of military force against these cartels, because ultimately they are as big a threat as many terrorist organizations in and around the world, and are rivaling other nations. I mean, their military capabilities are rivaling the Mexican government's ability. Right. And so they can't control them. And it's up to the U.S. To take back security of our border.
You brought up such great points right there, Congressman, because I try to tell that to folks all the time. When you look at the amount of deaths that have occurred in our country, and we're just like using the same statistics from 2021 through 2022, over 107,000 Americans dying of opioid overdose or addiction or poisoning. 60% of those that were killed were literally killed because of the use of fentanyl. And we now know that it's in counterfeit pills. I've actually seen how simple it is to process these pills. I went down to Houston crime labs. I made the pills, these little fake pills, and they look like Percocet. They can look like Oxycontin. They can look like Adderall. They can look like anything. And we know that the Chinese government is allowing these fentanyl precursor chemicals into Mexico. We know that the Mexican cartels are acquiring it from them. I've literally said this. You don't need to say this. I've said this over and over again. My husband was a warfighter. He worked, he was former Delta Force and worked in the U.S. military and traveled all over the world. This looks like asymmetrical warfare to me. It's like when I have over 107,000 Americans dead, I went to Philly, and literally the carnage on the streets with seeing Americans overdosing and needles hanging out of their arms and the use of the most bizarre tranquilizers with fentanyl. It literally looked like I walked into The Walking Dead, into a horror film. And so it's got to go through your head as a congressman. I'm a mother, we have children, and I'm thinking to myself, my gosh, our nation is literally being targeted left and right. When's it all going to stop?
Yeah, Philadelphia is a truly tragic story. And I've been to Philly. I've seen the city is just being devastated. Brendan Boyle, who's the congressman there, a Democrat who defends this administration and their performance at the border. I make light of the fact that the Eagles stink. But with him, but I do have a serious conversation with him about, coming to grips with the fact that his district and districts like his across the country are being decimated by fentanyl and by the impact of this lack of border security. And we do have a new China task force set up. Mike Gallagher is the chair. He's going to do a great job of highlighting all of the different ways that China is putting our nation at risk, our national security at risk, but also by encouraging these fentanyl precursors coming into Mexico and being put together and then trafficked across the border. China has a role to play and they have a responsibility, and we need to hold them accountable as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing that I heard that I thought was really fascinating, and I wanted to ask you because when I was talking to the Border Patrol agents' wives, one thing that struck me was when they were talking about their husband's training. So I guess I'm trying to remember if it was 3 months ago or 3 weeks ago. They went every 3 months. They go through, their training as far as like a live fire training, so that they're prepared and ready to go. So we don't have any incidences, and they're used to that. Well, she said on the last training, and you all can look into this when you hold your hearing. The last training that they were on, they were supposed to be using live fire, live rounds, as part of their training. And her husband got home and said, guess what? We didn't use any live rounds. And she was like, what? What did you use? They were using rubber bullets. She said, because according to our supervisors, we could not use the live rounds because our ammunition is being shipped to Ukraine. So while we're shipping ammunition to Ukraine, and I'm not saying that the Ukrainians don't have a right to protect themselves. I'm not saying that, Russia is definitely an aggressor, but we have an open border. We have Border Patrol agents whose ammunition is now being shipped to Ukraine. Not only that, and I'll give this one to you too. You can ask questions about this because I haven't seen stories about this out there, but they told me that their trucks, like they're out on assignment, they're supposed to be out there patrolling the border, and they're being asked to sit in place because they don't have enough money for gas to patrol the border. So they're actually sitting in place. Some of them have to do everything, patrol by foot, because they don't want to pay for the gas. And even their gas cards aren't topped off. So what do you do when your job is to protect the border and now you can't protect the border?
Tragically misplaced priorities by this administration when their concern is over borders in the Ukraine instead of borders of the United States, of our own country.
Right.
we do have a responsibility. And that's why the Republican Study Committee, it's the largest caucus in our conference. About 170 members of the Republican conference are in the Republican Study Committee. And every year, they've been around 50 years, but every year we put out a balanced budget. We actually drill down and prioritize. So we go after wasteful spending on foreign aid. We ramp up spending and prioritize spending on border security. We ramp up spending on defense, but at a reasonable level. And we balance the budget within 10 years. So it can be done. That's what I'm proud of.
But Democrats are refusing to negotiate, right? The Democrats are refusing to negotiate.
Well,
for now. You think you get them to the table?
I think that if we say that reasonable people have to at least come together at the table, and we're sitting at the table, we're waiting for this administration to come to the table and talk about what they view as critical legislation. And we also view it as critical legislation. We're not going to allow this nation to default on its obligations. We're not going to cut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, but we are going to have a conversation about moving forward ways we are not going to accumulate the same amount of debt that has risen to the levels that we currently have and are going to threaten the livelihoods and lives of children, grandchildren, and future generations of Americans.
Yeah, and I think that is so important. I don't think we pay enough attention to this. But I definitely, before I let you go, and I want to bring you back because I think we do need to talk about our nation's debt, what that means to the future, how we can, what are some ways, I guess, this Congress can cut our spending and reduce the waste of taxpayer dollars? I mean, is there something that you're looking at right now?
Well, sure. I mean, there are a variety of programs and agencies that, for example, most agencies are here in Washington, D.C., in the swamp, one of the most expensive places to live, one of the most expensive places to take up real estate in the country. I think the Department of Agriculture would probably be better served in an agriculture state. In some place with cheaper real estate, in a place where salaries go further, some place where maybe you don't have to drive from out in, 40, 50 miles into D.C. To come to work in the morning, where you can just come a couple of miles to your office downtown in Kansas City or in Topeka or in somewhere like that. So we have dozens of agencies that would be better served if they were out somewhere in the rest of the country. And you know what else that does is it takes away the power of the lobbyists because they're all here kind of rooting around in the swamp. And if they have to go out to Kansas to lobby or do whatever they do, they're going to have a harder time impacting policy. And instead, the policymakers will be listening to the American people.
I think that is so brilliant. Oh my goodness. That is really going to be I just would love to see the battle over that, right? Because I remember talking to folks years ago when I was covering stories on the EPA. So the Environmental Protection Agency, right? EPA and all of the over regulations under the Obama administration. And I remember there were so many people when I would look at the list of new EPA employees, it would be Sierra Club members, real leftist agendaed folks that worked under the Democrats and under what I call the new Democrats, right? So it is kind of like this rotating door with the lobbyists and with people working. And if you can kind of break that up, not only will you be benefiting people, in the Midwest and other parts of the country where jobs, that would bring jobs, that would bring up the housing prices, maybe give people more of an affordability, but you will really be changing that kind of swampy structure, that kind of like swamp creatures.
Let's send the EPA to New Orleans. Let's send the education department down to Tallahassee, Florida, down in where all of Ron DeSantis's reforms are taking place, and they can actually see what's going on. I mean, these are the types of changes that need to happen in Washington. It can't just be cutting around the edges. It needs to be fundamental restructuring of the way this place works.
Wow, Congressman, you're brilliant. That's perfect. I wish someone would have thought of that earlier. Let's make that happen. Let's do whatever we can, America. Let's push for this. Let's support Congressman Cline on this. I think that would be great. Before I let you go, I have to ask you this. Will you be looking into COVID, social media censorship, Hunter Biden? I mean, all of these issues beyond, and the border being so fundamentally important, but these issues are also going to be something that you are all looking into, right, with the House?
Absolutely. In addition to the special select subcommittee Jim Jordan has on the weaponization of the intelligence agencies, in addition to the select subcommittee on China, special committee on China, we have a special committee on COVID as well. Every committee across the House of Representatives is activated and has a long list of areas in which Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Joe Biden have conspired to undermine the strength of the United States of America, and we need to respond aggressively to root out the bad behavior, the corruption, and shine a light of transparency on this process, and hopefully start some conversations about reforms. We have no illusions about changing Joe Biden, changing Chuck Schumer, but at the very least, we can set the stage for what will be an aggressive campaign to take back our country and take back our Congress and our presidency.
Thank you so much, Congressman Cline. You all heard that. The Republicans have been activated. They have been activated. This is straight from Congressman Cline. We're going to root out that corruption. We're going to fight hard. And we're going to, I think every single listener and every American that believes in the foundation of this country has a responsibility to back their lawmakers that are representing them, that are doing the job like you are, and others who are out there putting up the fight in the swamp for every single one of us. We have a duty to back you on these, to let you know how we feel, to stand up for what's right in our country. And thank you so much for being on the Sarah Carter Show. MyPillow, you all know how much I love Mike Lindell and MyPillow. Why? Because this is a true American company. This is a true patriot. They care about us, right? And Lindell cares about us, and he cares about American-made products. That's why my dogs have MyPillow beds. I've got the MyPillow doggy bed right underneath my desk right here that Macy Daisy Buttercup loves to sleep on. I've got the other one in the house, the giant one. That's where Danny sleeps. And by the way, Pika Lola took the other giant one that came into the house, and she's my other little dog. She's a Shih Tzu. But the thing is that MyPillow sells so much more than just the doggy beds, right? Or pillows. It's slippers, it's towels, it's sheets, it's everything. And right now, you can get the Giza Dream Sheets for as low as $29.98. Yeah, you heard me right. $29.98. I know it sounds crazy, but you even get a 60-day money-back guarantee and a 1-year limited warranty. You just can't get that anywhere else, guys. You can't. That's why every single bed in my house, doesn't matter if it's queen, king, or twin, or full, has MyPillow bed sheets, Giza bed sheets. I give them to my kids. They're with them in college, right? These are the top quality sheets that you can own. And right now you can shop the New Year specials at mypillow.com and use promo code Carter. You got to use the promo code Carter, CARTER, to get huge discounts on all MyPillow bedding products, including blankets, pillows, and comforters. And get the Giza Dream bed sheets for as low as $29.98 while quantities last. Stock up now at mypillow.com and use the promo code Carter for the New Year's specials. mypillow.com, promo code Carter. Folks, there is a new story out, an analysis that shows that we don't have enough weapons to fight China if China goes to war with us, if China wages war. And you think, oh, you might be thinking to yourself, oh, what would that really happen? Could that really happen? Yeah, it can really happen. And right now, a U.S. four-star general, he's warning of war with China by 2025. And I absolutely believe it. That's why I've brought on Gordon Chang to the show. I've brought on experts with regard to China like Daniel Hoffman, like Bill Gertz, my good friend Bill Gertz. I want to read you this because it's crazy. It says, the war in Ukraine has exposed widespread problems in the American armaments industry that may hobble the U.S. military's ability to fight a protracted war against China. Like basically, we will run out of our ammunition, weapons within a week. Within a week. How did we get to this point? How are we, the United States of America, literally putting our nation's future, our children's future at risk like this? I was telling you about the Border Patrol and talking to the wives and asking Congressman Cline about this because even our Border Patrol agents right now they feel like they're sitting ducks. They have to like park their vehicles because they don't have enough money for the gas, right? They're being told by their supervisors, don't drive up and down the border, just put your vehicle in one position and don't move. They don't have enough ammunition to do live fire training. What? They are up against the cartels, people. They are up against the cartels. And I don't know if you saw that video that was out a few weeks ago, but it was drone footage and the cartels are on the other side of this, some narcos standing there all, masked up and with their weapons. And they were shooting up at the drone. They were along the U.S. border. They were in Mexico, and they were shooting up at a drone, and it was kind of all over social media. But that happens all the time. I mean, the cartels have massed more weapons than our own U.S. law enforcement. And by the way, resources as well, because they're listening in on our phone calls. They have intelligence capabilities. They have the right resources, which means equipment and technology to infiltrate, intercept phone calls. Yeah, they've got all of that. And now we're reading about this when it comes to China. This is very important. This is a Jazz Shah piece as well. It's on hotair.com. It says protracted conflict has exposed the strategic peril facing the U.S. as weapons inventories fall to a low level and defense companies aren't equipped to replenish them rapidly. And that is written by Seth Jones, a senior vice president for the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington, D.C. For more than the last 20 years, the U.S. fought an insurgency warfare in Iraq, Afghanistan, and everywhere else. By the way, we left so much, billions of dollars in weaponry in Afghanistan. We literally funded the Taliban, making them the world's most well-stocked terrorist organization when it comes to weapons and military-grade weapons, which is interesting now because stories are coming out that Russia is actually trying to negotiate with the Taliban to buy some of the weapons and some of the technology that we left behind. Isn't that interesting? That the Russians are now dealing. I mean, how much worse can this get? How much worse of a president can Biden be in this administration? It's like, I would have to believe that they are literally working with the enemy because they are making it so easy for our enemies. Now, I want to go to this 4-star general, and he's warning with war in China in 2025. It's General Mike Minihan, who heads the Air Mobility Command. He wrote to the leadership of its roughly 110,000 members. And this is what he says. He says he hopes he's wrong. He says he hopes he's wrong, but he says that his gut is telling him that the United States would fight China within the next 2 years. And I believe that too. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I believe that China sees the forest through the trees. They've always done that. They've always planned ahead. And China is looking at the world now and saying, nah, now it's our time. And they've always made it perfectly clear that they never even understood and they never even really cared. Other than the fact that that the United States is the global leader and the rest of the world looks towards us. But they have been working diligently, that is the Chinese Communist Party, to infiltrate not only the United States, we've seen what they've done buying up our agricultural land, targeting areas like I showed you on Sean Hannity, where we were up in Montana and the Chinese Communist Party, companies connected to it, purchased tons of land all around the area where our ICBM nukes are. And that they have infiltrated our social media, that they are watching. They took over OPM, our Office of Professional Management. They hacked into there and they figured out who the majority of our intelligence operatives are. Why? Because they got a hold of the SF-86s. Do you guys remember that? So here we have this general now saying, I hope I'm wrong, but I have a feeling China's going to want to make a move. China will make a move because China will go into Taiwan and China will take Taiwan. I do believe this. And what do we think? Do we think Taiwan is just going to sit back and nobody else in the world is going to care? It's not even about Taiwan fighting back. Guys, it's not even about us trying to fight for Taiwan. Take that out of the picture. What about Australia? What about other nations in the world that see this encroachment, that see this expansion? The general's views do not represent the Pentagon, but they show concern at the highest levels of the U.S. military over a possible attempt by China to exert control over Taiwan, which China claims as a territory. Both the United States and Taiwan will hold presidential elections in 2024. And believe me, China would love to see Joe Biden stay in office, but they know now he is so utterly failed. And I think that the Chinese want to move in quickly. They don't want to see someone like President Trump in office. They will move quickly to set the world off balance. It doesn't mean that they'll invade the United States. They will try to set the world off balance. Off balance. Before I wrap up, let me read this to you. This is from Reuters. These comments, of course, the Department of Defense said is not representative of the department's view on China. Of course not. Where did that come from? One of the, Chinese apologists over at the Department of Defense. That always happens. They're always going to downplay. But U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said earlier this month, he seriously doubted that ramped up Chinese military activities near the Taiwan Strait were a sign of an imminent invasion of the island by Beijing. Let me tell you something about Lloyd Austin. He is a complete idiot. It absolutely is. So either he's an idiot or he's just flat out lying to you. And I think that's why you're seeing this general, this 4-star general, Mike Minahan, stand up and say, hey, guess what? I hope I'm wrong, but I believe that China is going to make its move. And folks, we have all got to be concerned about that because it's not just going to stay in China, right? We know what happens. And we have not seen a world war or this type of war ever in our lifetimes. We've seen different wars. But this could be very, very serious. This could be a game changer for the United States. We have to have the right people in office, not these sellouts. And we have to take these threats very seriously. And the fact that we cannot defend ourselves is indicative of how dangerous a situation we are all in. We are all in. Folks, thank you so much for following the Sara Carter Show. I will be back again with great guests. We've got some really incredible guests coming up. I've got Nick Pope. He was former head of the British Defence's office on unidentified flying objects. He worked with the British Defense Ministry. He will be on the show to talk to us and give us the latest updates on UFOs. Thank you so much for being a part of the Sara Carter Show. If you want more of this great show and you want to be able to communicate with me directly, follow me on Truth at Sara Carter Official, on Twitter at Sara Carter DC, and on Instagram at SCarterDC. God bless you. God bless our great nation. And God bless the great state of Texas.